That night, Tadanori called Edward to recommend Moroha for an S-rank designation. However, Edward said he was disappointed in Moroha because he had already tested him and didn't think he was ready to be nominated for the S-rank yet. It turned out the person who had attacked Moroha was actually Angela, and her intention was to test him. Tadanori pointed out that Moroha had defeated the Dreadnought even though there were 3 people involved. Edward suspected the other 2 must have been just as powerful. The next day, when Moroha returned to his room, he was surprised to find Maya there. She told him that starting that day, they would be roommates. Maya asked him to think of her as a soft body pillow. Moroha was clearly shocked and asked her to go back to the principal's office, but Maya said that the decision had already been approved by Mari. Moroha found it hard to believe, but that night, they ended up sharing the same bed. Moroha felt uneasy, wondering if that kind of situation was even okay. The next morning at breakfast, Tadanori told Shizuno that she had been chosen to work overseas because the headquarters in England didn't have enough dark mages. Tadanori believed they would be glad to have a student who had defeated a metaphysical. Shizuno immediately rejected the idea, but Tadanori said that the decision had already been made by her family. That morning, Shizuno walked to school looking downcast. Moroha, along with Satsuki and Maya, greeted her. Satsuki, annoyed, told Shizuno that Maya had become Moroha's roommate. Maya hoped Shizuno could accept her, and she grabbed onto Moroha's arm. Shizuno asked Moroha to explain what was going on, but he said he didn't understand anything either. During lunch break, Moroha and his friends were eating together when Satsuki commented that their lunches were not fancy enough. She showed off the sandwiches she made. Maya responded by saying that onigiri were also delicious. At that moment, Shizuno was eating curry bread and offered some to Moroha by feeding it to him, which annoyed Satsuki. Satsuki questioned why Moroha could do something like that in front of his little sister and called him unfaithful. She reminded everyone that in their past life, Moroha used to feed her every day and was always kind to her. Moroha then fed Satsuki too, and she didn't even mind if he kissed her while her eyes were closed. That afternoon, Shizuno parted ways with Moroha and the others and quietly watched them as they joked around together. While taking a bath later that evening, Shizuno admitted to herself that she was jealous of Satsuki for being able to call Moroha big brother and for being spoiled by him. Shizuno, on the other hand, was not treated the same way. She wondered why things always turned out that way for her and eventually broke down in tears. The next day at school, Satsuki told Moroha that she had already talked with the principal about becoming his roommate, arguing that she was his little sister in their past life. But the principal had rejected the request. She asked Moroha not to think of Maya as his sister. Satsuki also found it strange that Shizuno didn't show up at school and hadn't contacted any of them. Then Maya suddenly walked into the classroom. That same day, Edward visited Shizuno's home. He was surprised that she was willing to go abroad. Tadanori told him that Shizuno wouldn't turn down an offer from Edward. Not long after, the Urashibara family's butler informed Tadanori that head Shimon was on the phone and wanted to speak with Shizuno. Tadanori told her to take the call. To her surprise, the caller turned out to be Moroha, who asked her what was going on. Shizuno claimed she had the flu, but Moroha could tell she was lying. He warned her that if she didn't tell him the truth, he would come over. Shizuno finally admitted that she was going to study in England. Moroha was shocked by how sudden that decision was. He told her he would support her if it was truly what she wanted, but he also knew it wasn't. Moroha asked her to ignore what Tadanori had said. At that moment, Shizuno remembered how in her past life she had been subjected to cruelty. Because of her ties to the Urashibara family, she felt like she had no choice but to obey. Upon hearing that, Moroha punched the phone and declared that no chains could ever bind human freedom. Hearing his words, Shizuno was moved. Even without her memories, Moroha was saying the exact same thing Shusora had once said in their past life. Shizuno told Moroha not to worry about her, assuring him that she would be just fine. She quickly ended the call and tried to hold back her tears. Meanwhile, Edward mentioned that he planned to appoint Shizuno as the head of the department after she graduated. Hearing this, Tadanori felt genuinely happy. Edward admitted he believed Tadanori would feel lonely without Shizuno, but Tadanori asked him not to worry about it. Not long after, Butler informed Tadanori that Moroha had arrived at their house, but Tadanori told him to just send the boy away. Suddenly, Moroha broke into Shizuno's house and Shizuno was shocked to see him there. Moroha said he would break in again if she ever lied to him. Tadanori was stunned that Moroha would damage property and force his way in. Moroha admitted that he had lost control. Edward asked what he intended to do, and Moroha said he came to warn Edward, someone who couldn't see what was right in front of him, and to call him out. Shizuno tried to stop Moroha from saying any more, but he went ahead and confessed that he was the one who defeated the metaphysical on his own. Tadanori asked if that meant Moroha was claiming to be rank S. Shizuno reminded everyone that being rank S came at the cost of personal freedom. Moroha said he understood that, and he was ready to face the consequences. Shizuno was confused as to why Moroha would go that far for her. Moroha replied that he did it because of her, that she was the reason he could do any of it. Shizuno broke down in tears, overwhelmed with emotion. She and Moroha had already died once before, yet here they were, reunited. Compared to that, studying abroad was no big deal. Moroha said that because he had no memories of their past life together, Shizuno now meant everything to him, and he could not bear to be separated from her. He asked Shizuno to speak honestly about how she truly felt. Crying, Shizuno said that she wanted to be with Moroha in their past life, in this life, and in the life to come. Moroha asked her to come to him, and Shizuno ran into his arms. In that moment, she felt as if the chains that had bound her for so long were finally broken. She wept uncontrollably in his embrace. Tadanori suspected that Moroha was going to take Shizuno away. Moroha cheekily stuck out his tongue at Tadanori before leaping out the window, carrying Shizuno in his arms. Meanwhile, Maya and Satsuki had already arrived with a car to pick them up. They all quickly made their getaway. Shizuno felt so happy to finally break free from everything that had held her down. Tadanori pleaded with Edward to bring Shizuno back, but Edward said he had no interest in getting involved in internal affairs. Still, Tadanori, as the head of the Japan branch, begged him to reconsider. As the car driven by Maya sped down the road, one of the tires was suddenly punctured by a knife thrown straight at it. The vehicle lost control instantly. Moroha used his magic to summon chains that wrapped around the car, stopping it from going off the road. The car spun around before coming to a full stop, held in place by the chains. It turned out that Angela was the one who had thrown the knife. Moroha quickly recognized her as the one who had attacked him before. Edward showed up and demanded that Moroha return Shizuno to him, but Moroha refused. Edward argued that if Moroha had truly defeated the metaphysical on his own, then there would be no reason for Shizuno to study abroad. Moroha challenged Edward, saying he would prove it to him by defeating him in a fight. Edward gladly accepted the duel. Satsuki immediately activated her planaria, followed by Shizuno and Moroha. Moroha summoned his weapon named Sarakia. Edward admired the sword but confidently claimed that his own weapon would leave Moroha in pieces. Edward drew his massive sword and immediately launched an attack at Moroha. Moroha met his strike head-on and the two clashed in a fierce sword fight. Moroha quickly cast his Taihaku technique, but it still wasn't strong enough to defeat Edward. Seizing the opportunity, Edward pierced Moroha with his blade. Meanwhile, Angela charged at Satsuki and Shizuno. With just a single strike, she managed to knock Satsuki down. However, Satsuki refused to give up and quickly got back on her feet. As Angela prepared to deliver a finishing blow, Shizuno cast Freezing Shade, freezing the surrounding area in order to stop Angela's attack. At the same time, Maya ran up the hill. Moroha was still locked in battle with Edward. He attempted to use his Freeze Blade spell, but Edward effortlessly blocked it. Moroha was puzzled, trying to figure out what trick Edward had used. Edward explained that he had concentrated all the prana in his body into a single point known as Kinu. Then, using a technique called Kaugi, he shortened the time it took to move, allowing him to become untouchable for a few seconds, a state called Gyokuto. These two variations together were known as Kanatsu. Moroha thought that even if Edward could block his third stage attacks, using the fire element version of Gyokuto might be able to burn through. He began casting the spell, but Edward responded immediately with Hagen Kaugi, sending Moroha flying deep into the forest. Edward advised him to stop fighting, suggesting it was time to walk away from the battle. While recovering in the forest, Moroha set up a Field of Dreams, a spell that helped heal injuries, similar to the one used at school. Maya encouraged him, saying he could now fight without worrying about protecting anyone else. Grateful, Moroha thanked her, now ready to go all out. Moroha began casting again. Edward moved in to attack, but it turned out to be a trap, a dark magic technique. Moroha launched his Yin-Yang Kurakara strike, shattering Edward's sword in an instant. However, Edward revealed he had a second pendant. Activating his Jinrei Augustin, his body was covered in armor and a shield, making him look like a fully armored warrior. Meanwhile, Angela was still fighting Satsuki and Shizuno. Her attack came to a halt when she heard a loud explosion coming from the hill. Confused, she paused to understand what was going on. Back in the battle, Moroha kept attacking Edward using both fire and freeze blade spells, but none of them could penetrate the armor. Edward had become nearly invincible, blocking all of Moroha's sword swings with ease. Moroha attacked from every direction, but it still wasn't enough to bring him down. Eventually, Moroha managed to crack the helmet protecting Edward's head. Edward complimented him, impressed by his strength. Edward then chased after Moroha, trying to land a decisive hit. Moroha dodged, trying to think of a strategy to finally defeat him. That's when memories of his past life with Shizuno came rushing back, remembering how he had once saved her from slavery and how she had chosen to stay by his side even when the whole world turned against them. Shizuno, it turned out, had been his wife in the previous life. With that memory, Moroha recalled how to use the Decrete's Weight technique. He leaped into the air and began chanting the 8th stage of dark magic. Edward was thrilled, looking forward to the moment of glory. Angela was shocked to learn that someone besides the Russian prince could wield such a spell. Shizuno, on the other hand, was confident the battle wasn't over. Moroha was casting a forbidden incantation. As Moroha completed the spell, a white dragon appeared and began to freeze the area around them. Edward called Moroha a captured monster and claimed that he must be the 7th S-rank comrade. For the first time, Angela genuinely worried about Edward's safety. That night, Moroha and his friends were gathered at Mary's house. Satsuki was curious why Moroha hadn't finished off Edward during the fight. Moroha admitted that his only goal had been to freeze Edward in place so he couldn't move, even though Maya had hoped he would avenge her car from earlier that afternoon. Moroha explained that he had attacked Edward countless times and all he managed was to dent his armor a little, and he still had no idea how to actually beat him. Mary asked how Satsuki's injuries were and Maya said she was nearly done healing her. Moroha then asked if Shizuno was alright and Shizuno said that Satsuki had protected her. Moroha felt grateful for how things had turned out. Not long after, the doorbell at Mary's house rang. It turned out Edward had come to visit. Moroha and Shizuno immediately went to meet him. Edward explained that he wasn't going to do anything rash since he and Moroha were both knights. He acknowledged Moroha's victory and shared that he had cancelled Shizuno's transfer. Edward said he came only to ask one thing. Why didn't Moroha dodge his punch back at the cafe? Moroha answered that he knew Edward never intended to actually kill him. Curious, Edward asked how Moroha could be so sure. Moroha explained that he could see through his opponent's intentions. Edward laughed and said Moroha was full of surprises. As the head of the British branch, Edward announced that he would be nominating Moroha for S-rank status. That night, Shizuno shared that Tadanori had told her Moroha would eventually be sent to the headquarters of the White Knight organization. Moroha responded that he actually preferred that over being far away from her. Then Moroha asked whether Shizuno was truly a netherworld sorceress. Shizuno admitted that she wasn't sure. She said she wasn't pretending, she simply couldn't express it the same way Satsuki could. What she really wanted was for Moroha to remember her. In their past life, Moroha had set Shizuno free because to him, no chain in that world could bind a person's freedom. Shizuno said that because Moroha was the one who freed her, he now had a responsibility to stay with her. She hoped he wouldn't let go, not until death and even beyond into the next life. Shizuno hugged Moroha and told him that he was the one who had bound her, both in their past life and in the present. To her, that bond was Moroha's way of making things right. Almost a month after the Edward incident, Akan Academy was finally entering summer vacation. Jin announced that the summer camp would be held on a small island in Yamaguchi Prefecture. Satsuki had no idea what they were supposed to do during the camp. Suddenly, one of the students, Takiko, who served as vice captain, lightly touched Moroha's back and asked him to go shopping for swimsuits with her after school. She insisted on picking out a snub boomerang-style swimsuit for him, which completely caught him off guard. Jin encouraged everyone to treat the summer camp like a fun party, but also reminded them not to do anything inappropriate. That day, Satsuki went to a shopping mall to look for an eye-catching swimsuit, hoping to outshine both Shizuno and Takiko in getting Moroha's attention. Meanwhile, Tadanori had arranged for a professional designer and stylist to help Shizuno choose a perfect and flattering swimsuit since she would be spending time with Moroha at the beach. However, Tadanori crossed the line by pushing Shizuno to act provocatively around Moroha, leaving her feeling resigned to going along with it. Elsewhere, Moroha was stopped by a swimwear shop, where he ran into his upperclassman, Haruka, who was trying on swimsuits. Moroha commented that the bikini Haruka had picked really suited her. Haruka blushed and called him cheeky. She wasn't sure if a girl with a smaller figure like hers could pull off a bikini, but Moroha reassured her that she could. He thought she looked cute. Embarrassed, Haruka called him a liar and said people often mistook her for a boy when she was younger. She quickly turned away and hid in the changing room. The day of the summer camp finally arrived. The students gathered together as Mary began chanting a spell to open a temporary transport gate. This magic was valuable as it could only be used once per day. Shortly after, everyone was transported to the beach. Satsuki was so excited that she immediately jumped into the ocean. But suddenly, she let out a scream that startled both Moroha and Shizuno. It turned out the waves had pulled at her swimsuit. She called out to Moroha for help. A short while later, Maya showed up and teased them for having fun without her. Haruka also arrived wearing a white shirt over her outfit. Moroha commented that it seemed like buying a new swimsuit was pointless if she was going to keep it covered. Haruka blushed in response. Satsuki, curious, asked how Moroha knew about the new swimsuit. Instead of answering, he told Satsuki to cover up her chest, which was a little exposed. Shizuno urged him to explain himself. Haruka was about to speak up when Yuisuke playfully touched her back, causing her to accidentally lift her shirt and reveal the bikini underneath. Yuisuke remarked that Haruka had made an effort for someone special, so that person should at least get to see it. Moroha said the bikini looked great on her. Suddenly, Tokiko grabbed Moreau's back, surprising him once again. Soon after, Sophia appeared wearing a bold and fashionable bikini that turned heads. Uesuke asked why Tokiko wasn't wearing a swimsuit. Frustrated, Tokiko explained that Jin had forbidden her from wearing anything too revealing, even though she really wanted Moroha to notice her. Upset, she again squeezed Moroha's back and called Captain Jin stubborn, clueless, and antisocial, claiming he was getting in the way of her feelings for Moroha. Just then, Jin showed up and pressed down on Tokiko's head in a light reprimand. She quickly tried to walk back what she had said. Jin then called everyone together to begin their training. He told them to choose a personal challenge and promised that they would need to complete it by the final day of camp. The students seemed eager to get started. Jin told them all to meet at the lodge by 6 p.m. Suddenly, Satsuki declared that she had already decided on her challenge. She wanted to race Haruka and was confident she would win. Haruka was puzzled and asked why Satsuki didn't choose a different challenge. Satsuki teased her, wondering if Haruka was intimidated by her charm, especially as she glanced at Haruka's chest, which was noticeably smaller than hers. Haruka started to feel a bit insecure. Satsuki noticed and said that it seemed like she would not be able to beat Haruka right away. She clarified that she did not mean to sound arrogant. Eventually, Haruka had no choice but to accept Satsuki's challenge. Once both of them were ready, Moroha gave the signal for the race to begin. They both activated their plana and started running. Haruka dashed forward at an impressive speed and won the race. Satsuki reached the finish line shortly after, visibly exhausted. Not satisfied with the outcome, she asked for a rematch. She pushed herself to the limit, but Haruka still managed to pass her effortlessly. It became clear that Satsuki was no match for Haruka when it came to speed. Uesuke commented that both of them looked very fired up. Shizuno remarked that Satsuki did not know her limits, while Maya was convinced Satsuki had no chance of beating Haruka and was simply pushing herself too hard. Suddenly, Moroha's phone rang. It was Edward calling him. He addressed Moroha as Jack, saying he gave him that nickname because Moroha was full of surprises like a jackpot. Edward pointed out how lucky Moroha was while Edward was stuck in a meeting. Moroha was out enjoying a vacation with a bunch of girls. Moroha was surprised Edward knew about the trip, and Edward explained that he had talked with Mari about the Six Heads meeting that involved Moroha. Edward asked if Moroha was curious about what was discussed, but Moroha was not interested and quickly hung up the call. Edward immediately called again. Afterward, Moroha returned to his friends. Shizuno asked who had just called, and Moroha explained that Edward wanted to nominate him for Shizuno's rank, but apparently the Lightning Emperor from Russia strongly opposed the idea. Maya mentioned that this could be dangerous. Mari had once told her the Lightning Emperor was not someone to take lightly. Shizuno realized that she was the one who had unintentionally revealed Moroha's strength to Edward. However, Moroha reassured her that it was not her fault. Meanwhile, Satsuki looked completely worn out after several rounds of racing with Haruka. Haruka asked if she was okay, and Satsuki responded that she was fine. That same day, Mary was traveling when she received a call from Maya, who wanted to update her on the summer vacation trip with their friends. Maya told her they had played a traditional watermelon splitting game and ended up eating the whole watermelon because Moroha thought it would be wasteful to throw it away. They had also done a courage test, although compared to Jin and Tokiko, it did not feel all that scary. Maya even shared that Jin had caught Tokiko sneaking into Moroha's room late at night. Hearing that, Mary was happy. This meant Maya had found a circle of friends she could be close with. Maya also shared that Moroha and Satsuki had sneaked out during the night, and both she and Shizuno had secretly followed them from a distance. That night, Satsuki had taken Moroha to the beach. She pleaded with him to help her train so she could become faster than Haruka. Moroha asked why she did not just choose a different challenge instead. Satsuki admitted that she might just be burdening him, but Moroha calmly told her not to rush things. Unexpectedly, Satsuki hugged Moroha tightly, which caught him off guard. She told him that it was the first time they had ever hugged. At that moment, Moroha suddenly remembered something from his past life. He used to always fight and left Sarasaha behind because Flaga did not want his younger sister to be on the battlefield. He knew Sarasa's hidden talents would awaken in a real combat situation. Because of that, Moroha advised Satsuki to stop challenging Haruka, since Haruka was a natural when it came to speed. She had simply refined her Jin Sokatsu ability. Trying to surpass Haruka in speed would only hurt her pride. Moroha suggested that instead of chasing someone else's strength, Satsuki should work on developing her own unique abilities. Up until now, Haruka had always been Moroha's sparring partner because no one else could match her speed. That was why Satsuki wanted to surpass Haruka, so she could become Moroha's new training partner. After hearing that, Moroha finally agreed to help her train. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Satsuki hugged him again and thanked him. Moroha was traveling together with Ando, the head of the Japan branch. Ando asked Mari to use her transport ability to take them to London once they arrived at the headquarters. They talked about how most of the saviors from other countries would be called to Tokyo, since the branch leaders were busy. It seemed that only the students ranked A and B had not yet been summoned. That afternoon, the students who were on summer break were enjoying a barbecue party. Their friends praised Satsuki's incredible grilling skills. Haruka was curious about how long Satsuki had been practicing barbecue. It turned out that Satsuki had practiced for a long time because she wanted Moroha to enjoy her delicious cooking. Uesuka told Moroha that he was pretty sure Mary was currently in a meeting with the six heads discussing Moroha. Suddenly, Kamikichi showed up and mentioned that Moroha's promotion to S rank might be cancelled. Because of that, Kamikichi asked Moroha to become his subordinate since Moroha was his junior at that time. Unfortunately, Takiko overheard this and said that Kamikichi hadn't even attended last year's camp and hadn't become a reserve squad member yet. Kamikichi immediately hung his head, clearly embarrassed by her words. Then Takiko playfully poked Moroha's back with a corn cob, causing him to shout. She asked him to sunbathe with her the next day and promised to apply lotion all over his body. Satsuki was surprised and asked if Takiko was planning to have Moroha apply sunscreen on her. Takiko said that applying sunscreen was outdated, and what she really wanted was a lotion for skincare and maturity. Hearing this, Satsuki, Haruka, and Maya were all shocked. Moroha wondered what exactly was going through Takiko's mind. Takiko poked Moroha again, this time on his lower back with a corn cob. She admitted that she had been thinking about mischievous things. She continued teasing Moroha, saying she wanted healthy and strong muscles. Then Takiko sat down on Moroha and said his lower back muscles were high quality. She moved gently while murmuring playful and teasing words. Fortunately, Jin arrived shortly after and grabbed Takiko's head, telling her to stop teasing Moroha. Takiko cried out in surprise and discomfort. Jin informed everyone that they would have discipline training the next day, so he asked everyone to give their best effort. Takiko complained that her head hurt as if it was about to split open. Sophia then teased her intentionally by joking that maybe her lower back muscles were sore. That night, Satsuki was accompanied by Moroha as they practiced running on the surface of the water. Moroha mentioned that Haruka could run hundreds of meters across the water without stopping. He advised Satsuki to act naturally by strengthening her determination and calming her mind. Satsuki tried again, but she fell. The training was still not enough for her because she wanted to be by Moroha's side. At that moment, Maya and Shizuno were watching from a distance. Shizuno decided to let Satsuki continue until she realized that her efforts might be in vain. Satsuki looked exhausted and Moroha encouraged her. She admitted to feeling something strange from the sea, but Moroha did not sense anything unusual. Satsuki guessed it was probably because she was shivering from the cold, so Moroha suggested they end their practice. The summer camp was only 2 days away, and that night the students held a fireworks celebration together. Maya really loved fireworks. It turned out that she had once been very scared because she didn't know which version of herself was real, the one from the past or the one in the present. Then Mary lit the fireworks and told Maya that both her past and present selves were still the same because she had the same soul and was the same person. Suddenly, Kamikichi appeared and asked everyone not to light fireworks without him. Takiko immediately sat on Moroha's lap, while Satsuki shot fireworks at Kamikichi. Takiko's conversation became too inappropriate, prompting Uesuki to reprimand her. Kamikichi jumped into the sea because his pants had caught fire. Satsuki then attacked Takiko with fireworks, but her attack missed, so Tokiko chased after all of them. The fireworks supply started running low, so Kamikichi asked Moroha to go get more. While Moroha was walking, he met Shizuno dressed in a yukata. It turned out that Shizuno had insisted he dress properly as well. Moroha wanted to leave to get the fireworks, but Shizuno stopped him, saying that it was the perfect time for the two of them to be alone together. To make things more awkward, Shizuno admitted she wasn't wearing underwear under the yukata. At first, Moroha refused, but eventually he found a quiet spot for them to sit together. He apologized for not having much time to spend with Shizuno. She realized then that the camp was actually quite enjoyable. Moroha even said he wanted to bring his family camping sometime, and Shizuno expressed that she wanted Moroha to bring her along because she wanted to be introduced to his family. Moroha was surprised to hear that. Moroha and Shizuno enjoyed watching the scattered fireworks. Tomorrow would be the last day of the camp, and they wanted to make the most of it by having fun. As the night grew deeper, the atmosphere became livelier with the bursts of fireworks. Shizuno leaned on Moroha's shoulder. The fireworks shone brightly at night before burning out, as if the days of summer were passing by too quickly. That day, the six heads held a meeting to discuss the proposal of promoting Moroha to S rank. Edward asked everyone to share their opinions on the matter. Vasilisa, the head of the Russian branch, opposed the idea. Charles, who represented France, agreed with Vasilisa. On the other hand, Ando, the head of the Japanese branch, supported the proposal, saying that Moroha clearly had talent. Jixin, the representative from China, chose not to comment. Meanwhile, Arlene from the United States asked for data to measure Moroha's abilities. Edward responded by saying that Moroha was incredibly strong. He had defeated a 9-headed metaphysical in an instant and left no trace behind. However, Vasilisa dismissed that as nothing more than an exaggerated tale. Charles questioned why Edward expected them to accept everything without any solid evidence, and Arlene expressed her disagreement as well. While the meeting was still in progress, Ondo suddenly sensed something. It turned out that a metaphysical was approaching. Sure enough, it emerged from the sea, a massive creature with crab-like pincers. Security forces monitored its movements from a helicopter. The metaphysical was reported to be 300 meters long. It was even more dangerous than a dreadnought class, and after a quick assessment, it was classified as a fortress class. Students watched its movement through the monitors, and at that moment, the fortress was in Japanese waters, heading south. That meant it would likely pass through the coastal camping area and reach Honshu within an hour. If the fortress-class metaphysical were to make landfall, the result would be catastrophic. Haruka asked when reinforcements would arrive, but Jin revealed that the Japanese HQ had ordered a retreat. They were not allowed to engage without direct orders from Japan's leadership. At the time, Mary and the other 6 heads members were still in the UK. Shizuna looked visibly shaken, so Moroha gently held her hand to help her calm down. Maya reassured everyone by saying that Mary's transportal would bring Ondo back quickly. Jin was confident the 6 heads would reach a decision soon. Satsuki asked if the students were really expected to obey the 6 heads' orders. Jin explained that the orders were absolute, and as the unit commander, he couldn't lead them into a pointless battle. Shortly after, a helicopter launched an attack at the fortress's leg. The students continued to monitor the situation, but still didn't know whether the creature was intelligent or just aggressive. Jin urged everyone to start packing and follow the evacuation order with the island residents. At that moment, Kamikichi complained about a stomachache and needed to see a doctor. Some students quickly got ready to leave, but Moroha instead invited Satsuki and Shizuno to prepare for a fight against the fortress. Meanwhile, Vasilisa laughed at Ondo's opinion and told him not to move an inch from his seat. Arlene, confused by what she heard, couldn't understand why they were discussing something so irrational. She certainly didn't believe a group of strikers could take on a fortress class without the 6 heads on the front lines. Vasilisa closed Arlene's laptop and said that if there truly was an S-rank man over there, then there should be no problem. So there was no need for Ondo to return to Japan. Charles agreed and swiftly put Ondo to sleep using a neutralizing technique. Soon enough, Ondo fell into a deep slumber. At that point, Edward hoped Moroha would make the right decision in facing the fortress. The island residents were already being evacuated to safer locations. Moroha, together with Satsuki, Shizuno, and Maya, decided to stand up against the fortress. Moroha asked Maya if she was truly willing to join them. Maya said she wanted to be her source of strength. Both Shizuno and Satsuki clearly had no intention of running away from the metaphysical. Not long after, Jin approached the group, surprising Moroha since Jin had previously insisted on retreating. Jin explained that he was there not as a captain or an officer, but simply as Jin. He repeated the words Moroha once said. How could they call themselves Swords of Salvation if they couldn't even protect 2 girls? That question had stuck with him deeply. It turned out Jin wasn't the only one. Other students also came to join them, asking for permission to fight alongside Moroha. As usual, Tokiko playfully grabbed the back of Moroha and joked that his backside was her reason for joining the battle. Uizuki asked Jin for a final answer, but Jin insisted he was no longer acting as a captain. Tokiko told him to drop the formal attitude and just be himself. The group united in spirit, shouting out the rally cry of the Swords of Salvation in perfect sync. Not long after, the harbor sirens began to sound. They were intentionally triggered to lure the target, which was likely to react to the loud noises from the ships and helicopter rotors. The strikers quickly formed into formation. As the massive fortress approached, its overwhelming size intimidated several female students, but Tokiko arrived and suddenly grabbed their chests. The first step in their strategy was to draw the target using the sirens, while the Black Mage unit would deploy a magical barrier and launch an attack from the left. This would drive the target toward the harbor. The fortress looked like a moving island due to its enormous size. Meanwhile, the Shirogane unit focused on supporting the Black Mage unit, and Haruka used her incredible speed to deliver messages between the forces. Once the fortress stopped moving, they would attack from 2 directions, left and front. Jin was in charge of attacking from the left, while Moroha was tasked with handling the front, which was the most dangerous zone. Moroha accepted the role without hesitation. As the fortress drew closer to the harbor, it caused huge waves along the coast and disrupted the local power grid. When the fortress came to a halt, Maya noted that at this rate, they wouldn't be able to surround it. Suddenly, a series of fireworks exploded in the sky. It was Kamikichi, known for his love of celebrations, who had fired them. He launched fireworks directly at the fortress, catching its attention. Moroha was baffled by what Kamikichi was doing. The fortress began moving toward Kamikichi. Its terrifying face caused Kamikichi to panic and run, but the fireworks in his backpack kept going off, drawing the fortress after him. At that moment, Jin gave the signal to the others to begin executing their battle plan. Unfortunately, Takanaka started losing confidence in fighting the fortress. Takiko quickly reminded him that he was already standing on the battlefield. Without hesitation, she grabbed his chest and made it clear to everyone else that no one was allowed to back down. She then rallied her troops to begin the operation. Shizuna began chanting her dreadful blizzard spell and froze the fortress's right leg. The other mages followed suit, combining their magic attacks. Their combined power managed to break one of the fortress's right legs. The students were overjoyed, but it was far too early to celebrate. The fortress continued moving, using its two massive pincers to drag itself forward. Unexpectedly, several insect-like monsters emerged from its body. Uisuke explained that it made sense for a giant insect-type creature to carry other insects within it. That was where the Shiragang unit came in to protect the Black Mage unit. Uisuke activated his plana and drew his bow to attack the enemies. The fortress pressed forward toward the residential area. Jin also activated his plana and pulled out his massive sword. He viewed the fortress as a personal challenge at this camp, something that could push him to match Moroha's strength. He leaped and swung himself toward the body of the fortress. Earlier during a training match, Jin had asked Moroha how to become as strong as he was. Moroha had replied that it was all about determination. Fired up with resolve, Jin managed to pierce a hole through the fortress's body. At that point, Moroha saw that all of his friends were executing their roles according to the operation plan. He quickly turned on a large sound system to blast loud music and attract the fortress's attention. Then he activated his plana and summoned his Saratiga sword. Moroha ran toward the fortress, leaped into the air, and used Black Gehenna combined with the yin element of Kurikara to strike. The attack successfully shattered one of the fortress's pincers. The other pincer swung toward Moroha, but he blocked it with his sword. The insect monsters continued swarming out of the fortress's body and attacked the strikers. Uisuke and Satsuki fought them back with their weapons. These creatures had razor-sharp stingers. One of them almost hit Satsuki, but Uisuke stabbed it with his spear in the nick of time. Sophia fought fiercely against the attacking insects. Suddenly, one of the creatures aimed its stinger at a striker. Without hesitation, Satsuki jumped in and sliced it cleanly in two. Meanwhile, while casting her spell, Takiko made an inappropriate remark about Moroha, which left Maya completely stunned by her choice of words. Jin kept slicing through fortress's body piece by piece. Haruka reported to Jin that the Dark Mage troops had successfully destroyed its left leg, and now they were launching attacks on its torso. At that point, Jin was simply waiting for Moroha to strike its head. But to his surprise, Fortress had multiple heads. Seeing how things had changed, Jin immediately told Haruka to halt all attacks and ordered the troops to retreat. Unfortunately, before they could pull back, Fortress let out a powerful sound wave. It was so intense that it caused the strikers' heads to ring and even neutralize their magical defenses. Jin struggled to endure the sound's vibrations while Moroha was still holding his position close to Fortress. Soon after, the sound wave stopped. Satsuki saw her teammates growing weak and collapsing from the impact. Despite everything, the strikers supported each other, trying to stay on their feet. The insect-like monsters started flying around again. Haruka ran over to the team and passed along an urgent message. They were all being ordered to fall back. At that moment, Satsuki remembered what Moroha had told her to stay calm no matter what. She asked Haruka to look after the others. Then she grabbed her sword, activated her plana, and dashed forward at full speed, slashing through the flying monsters with determination. Haruka was shocked by the strength of the plana radiating from Satsuki. Satsuki made up her mind she would protect her friends until Moroha arrived. Meanwhile, Moroha was about to attack Fortress when Haruka reached him. She told him that Satsuki was going wild, pushing herself with the same kind of intensity as Moroha and Jin. Realizing Satsuki might be in danger, Moroha told Haruka to run as far as she could. He needed to defeat Fortress himself. Haruka doubted it would be that easy, but Moroha was determined. He leaped onto Fortress's body knowing he had to take it down before it reached Satsuki. But even then, he wasn't sure how. Regular attacks weren't going to cut it. Suddenly, memories from his past life came rushing back. Moroha made a swift cut with his sword and dashed around Fortress's body, drawing a long trail with his blade. Haruka called out, warning him that his attacks looked too weak to bring Fortress down. But Moroha believed it would be enough. He asked Haruka again to leave. Haruka refused. She wanted to protect Moroha and continue fighting off the monsters coming their way. Moroha thanked her for staying. At the same time, the other strikers were being evacuated to Maya's protective shelter, but Satsuki insisted on fighting the insect monsters on her own. Not long after, Moroha called out to her, urging her to retreat with the others. But by then, Satsuki was completely exhausted and unconscious. Moroha grew worried, but Haruka ran over to help her. Haruka supported Satsuki, impressed by just how fast she had moved earlier. With all the strikers now safely evacuated and taking cover, Moroha knew it was up to him. Once he connected the cuts he had made earlier, he channeled his technique into the path of those strikes. The cuts formed a magical incantation, and with it, a massive explosion erupted. At the same time, Ando woke up from his sleep and was stunned to see that the strikers had actually managed to defeat Fortress. He felt incredibly proud of them. Arlie commented that there was no doubt anymore. Moroha really did belong in the S rank. However, Charles and Vasilisa didn't look too happy about that. Edward brought up his earlier suggestion, adding that while Moroha's powers had finally awakened, he still had a lot to learn. So they planned to treat him with special consideration until he graduated. Back on the battlefield, the injured strikers were starting to receive healing. Moroha and Satsuki sat by the beach. Moroha said he was completely worn out. Hearing that, Satsuki gently laid Moroha's head on her lap. Moroha asked if Satsuki's leg was still hurt. Shizuno showed up, saying she felt better now thanks to Maya's treatment. She playfully suggested they do something more relaxing. Shizuno pulled Moroha toward her and hugged him. Satsuki didn't like that and pulled him back. The two of them began playfully fighting over Moroha while he could only sit there helplessly. Suddenly, the rest of their friends joined them, all offering their thanks for Moroha and the others' teamwork. Uesuke also thanked Maya for providing medical support. Kamekichi excitedly asked what everyone thought of his performance earlier. Moroha asked what happened after Kamekichi was chased by Fortress. Apparently, Kamekichi had launched a lightning attack but passed out right after. Tokiko praised Satsuki for saving the Dark Mages and encouraged her to rest. Then, in a teasing tone, Tokiko offered to hold Moroha in her place. Jin quickly stepped in to stop her. The waves came and went like a gentle lullaby. As everyone started to unwind, Maya silently prayed that the strikers would be ready for whatever came next. She also hoped they could all sleep peacefully, at least for tonight. That day, Moroha met a female exchange student from Russia for the first time. He had come to see her because of a message in a love letter. Earlier, when he opened his locker, he found the letter inside. Curious, he opened it right away. The letter said the sender wanted to talk to him and would be waiting at Stadium 1, asking him to come immediately. When he arrived and met the girl, Moroha quickly realized that the letter was likely a setup to lure him out. However, the girl told him it wasn't a trick at all. She genuinely fell in love with him at first sight. Moroha was surprised and told her that sending a love letter and suddenly confessing feelings like that wasn't okay. But she explained that according to a reliable source in Japan, confessing your love behind the stadium after giving someone a love letter usually works out. Moroha admitted that it was, in fact, a common tradition. Then she boldly asked him to start a romantic relationship with her. Moroha was confused by her straightforwardness and wondered what she was really after. She sincerely said she wanted them to be a couple and start dating. Moroha told her that he didn't really know her well enough to be in a relationship. Right after hearing that, she looked heartbroken and said she didn't want to live anymore because he had rejected her. Moroha panicked, realizing that she wasn't joking. She admitted that she had been under a lot of stress lately. Trying to calm her down, Moroha offered his hand and suggested they start by being friends. That same day, Moroha's class welcomed a new student. Everyone was stunned by how beautiful she was. The new student turned out to be the same Russian exchange student, Elena Arshavina, who introduced herself and mentioned that people usually called her Lezia. She was from the Russian branch. Taro welcomed her and offered her a seat. Out of nowhere, Satsuki asked about Elena's last name, wondering why it didn't include her father's name. Elena explained that she didn't have parents. The name Arshavina came from the facility where she was raised. Satsuki apologized for asking. Elena then mentioned that she got a younger brother she cherished, so she wasn't completely alone. Not long after, Shizuno spoke up. She asked what Elena's true purpose was: investigation, headhunting, kidnapping, or even something worse. The question shocked the whole class. Everyone started wondering what was going on with Shizuno. Taro quickly scolded her for the strange question. Elena calmly responded that her purpose was to get close to Moroha. The moment she said that, Satsuki shouted and ran up to her. There was no way she was going to let that happen. Elena seemed confused and asked why. She explained that she had already confessed her feelings to Moroha. Satsuki freaked out upon hearing that. Moroha's classmates were now even more curious. They were impressed by how direct Elena was. Some even commented on how assertive foreigners could be. Satsuki couldn't believe Elena was making moves on Moroha behind her back. She introduced herself as Moroha's little sister. Elena was surprised to hear that and said she was jealous. Moroha's little sister was just too cute. Satsuki blushed at the compliment, but Shizuno snapped her back to reality. Satsuki quickly told Elena that she wasn't looking for flattery. She warned her that if she ever planned on confessing her feelings to Moroha again, she needed to get her permission first. Without hesitation, Elena dropped to her knees and begged Satsuki to let her have Moroha. Satsuki almost agreed without thinking, but then immediately changed her mind and refused. Shizuno looked confused by Satsuki's reaction. She then asked Elena what she actually liked about Moroha. Elena replied that it was love at first sight. Satsuki said that wasn't a good enough answer. According to Shizuno, if Elena truly had feelings for Moroha, she should be able to explain why. Elena asked Shizuno what her reason was. Shizuno confidently said she liked everything about Moroha. but Elena argued that wasn't a proper answer either. Meanwhile, the other boys in the class grew even more jealous of Moroha, who was becoming more and more popular by the minute. Moroha, on the other hand, couldn't understand how things had gotten so chaotic so quickly. During a sparring session, Sophia went up against Yuisuke. Yuisuke managed to trap Sophia's leg with his flail, but as he tried to swing it again, Sophia's chest deflected the flail, causing Yuisuke to lose his balance and fall. Satsuki looked surprised while Moroha commented that Sophia must have used Kangatsu. Yuisuke couldn't believe he had been beaten by her. Sophia teased him, saying even a mosquito had a better sense of smell than he did. Satsuki praised Sophia for winning the match, but Kamakichi was confident that Yuisuke wouldn't go down that easily. Haruka asked Moroha if it was true that Elena had confessed to him. Moroha was confused about how Haruka found out, but Maya said the entire school already knew. Mary smiled and commented that being young was truly wonderful. According to her, differences in nationality and ethnicity wouldn't matter at that age. She encouraged Moroha and the others to be good friends with Elena. At that moment, Shizuna looked visibly displeased while Elena was seen watching them from a distance. Suddenly, Yuisuke triggered a trap in an attempt to counter Sophia. His move used a light-based technique called Kaikoku. Kamakichi cheered Yuisuke on. Sophia acknowledged that the trap was well-crafted. She threw up her sword and used her Plana ability to shield herself as she calmly walked through the trap's range. Yuisuke pleaded with her to stop. Sophia initially thought Yuisuke was upset because he had failed to defeat her. However, she quickly realized that the trap had accidentally torn through her clothes. She looked down and noticed that she was completely exposed. Her classmates instinctively turned away or tried to shield her from view. Sophia quickly covered her chest and called Yuisuke a pervert. Then, in a reflex, she slapped him so hard that he was sent flying. Right then, Takiko showed up and without warning, groped Sophia's chest. Sophia was too stunned to react and simply froze. Takiko made a playful remark comparing Sophia to an actress from an adult-themed show. A few seconds later, Jin forcefully pulled Takiko away by the head, making her cry out in pain. Later that day after school, Elena approached Moroha. Satsuki immediately clung to Moroha's arm and asked Elena what business she had with him. Shizuna was confused as to why Elena had waited for Moroha. Then Elena, with total confidence, asked Moroha to go on a date with her the next day. Satsuki and Shizuna were both shocked to hear that. The next day, Moroha showed up at the meeting spot. It turned out that right after Elena's invitation, Satsuki had stepped in and insisted that if Elena was planning to go on a full-day date with him, then she and the others would tag along. Shizuna chose not to join because she had other plans and left on her own. Satsuki declared that she would protect Moroha. Meanwhile, Elena stated she wanted to prove she was the one most deserving to be Moroha's girlfriend. That comment made Satsuki extremely upset.